Hey there everybody, welcome back to our video series of building responsive designs using Figma. This is your course instructor Naveed back again. So before we proceed, as always, please remember to log into our channel of SkillFusion Academy and hit the red subscribe button to stay tuned to all our upcoming videos and more information on the video series of building responsive designs using Figma. Alright, let us begin. Alright, so in our previous video, we successfully built a responsive navigation bar and we integrated it into our hypothetical website in addition to a responsive banner and the banner overlay text. And all in all, we successfully tested out the responsiveness of the site, and we saw how the navigation bar and the individual items on the navigation bar could be built as responsive and interactive items. And today, we are going to do something new and exciting, and that is building cards. So as a lot of us are familiar with portals such as Amazon, eBay, and Alibaba, so whenever we try to explore or shop for a specific item, we come across cards that are laid out in a way that provides us information about the product's name, category, price, user reviews, etc. And that is precisely what we are going to start building today. However, before diving into the design itself, we are going to take a look at some of the prevailing practices and some of the do's and don'ts when we are designing these cards. Okay, let's dive in. Right, so what we see here is a card for a chair with a lot of information about the name or the type of the chair, the set number, the size and or dimensions of the chair, the material itself, how many chairs the user is looking for, the kind of color the user would like to select, and the price, and finally a call to action button, or as we like to call it, add to basket or add to cart. So, upon looking at this card for the very first time, what are your impressions? So, first of all, you might think that yes, it looks like an elegant card. It has most of the basic features. It shows you the price, some of the details, and it also allows you to select quantities, colors, etc., different features, and finally it has a call to action button. However, in terms of best practices in the industry, and also considering that we must consider accessibility features whenever we are designing. So the first thing that pops into my head is that this text itself, where it says set number 2854983, the text seems to be a bit too faded out, which as a user myself with high-powered glasses, it's kind of difficult to see. So we don't want other users like myself to have a similar experience. So what we need to do is to increase the contrast, make the text and the image more visible. To that point, we also need to make sure that the card does not overburden the user with information. So there is a lot of information on this card itself, and if you go back to your experience on Amazon or eBay, whatever happens when you click on one card is that it automatically navigates you to a different product page where you can find all these details about the size, the colors, the materials, etc. So we don't really need all this information here. So to simplify it, we can just keep it as a name, maybe the set number or the item number itself, and then the quantities, the color, the price itself, and finally the call to action button. That simplifies things. Now, Let's take a look at another example. This is a very different kind of card. This is not built for e-commerce, but rather for a blog. Right, so as per prevailing best practices, as you can see that the card starts with a banner or an image at the very top, followed by the date and the title, followed by a description and the author, and then finally a call to action button, which allows the user to expand the text or maybe navigate to a different page or open up a different modal for more details. Now, this is fairly simple. It looks almost complete. Maybe one thing that could be missing is the number of views or the number of reactions that other users have had to this particular post. Okay, let's look at another one. Alright, so we're back to e-commerce, and this is a much more simplified version of a card. And each card has an image showing the item itself. It has a title or the name of the item itself, followed by some user reviews, and finally it has a price. Now, this looks fairly simple and straightforward. However, one major thing missing from this is a call to action button, such as an add to cart, or maybe even add some more quantities in case if you want to add more than one. Yet another best practice is that looking back at our example of the chair, if we go back a couple of paces, there we go. Alright, so looking at this card itself, you can see that there is a background which separates the card itself from the background by creating a contrast. So we can do this by creating a background against each card, like this blog itself, or we can simply add a shadow to separate each card. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. And now, let's look at one final example before we dive into our practice. This is yet another example of how you can design cards. This is very simple yet very straightforward. It shows you what item you want to buy, the title of the item, a brief description of the item as well, along with the price, the number of stars depicting how the users have rated or reviewed this item, and finally a call to action button such as add to cart. Right, so looking back at some of these best practices here, as well as some of the pros and cons we just discussed, we are going to keep all this in mind as we dive into our design. Alrighty, let's dive into the design. Okay, so just a quick note here is that before diving into any design, it's always a great practice to keep all our designs segregated or separate in different pages or layers for those of us who love using Photoshop and Illustrator. And it's a great practice because it helps us to keep our design categories separate from each other, and rather than clunking all our designs into a single page like this one, it actually helps us to find the designs and the components much more easily whenever our client asks us to. So the first thing we do is to take our cursor to the top left of the page, just underneath the menu items where it allows us to select frames, shapes, pen tools, text, etc. Just underneath that, there's a little text that says page 1, which is a drop down. So we click on it, and as you can see at the very top here, it shows you the pages. And right now we are on the first page. We can add a separate page just by clicking the plus sign here, and there we go. Now we have a different page. Let's rename the pages. We rename page 1 as, I don't know, draft 01 landing page and nav bar, and we rename page 2 as draft 02 cards. Awesome. Let us begin the cards then. Okay, so let us start with a very basic shape, and by that I mean a rectangle. So there we go, we have a rectangle, and we are not actually treating this rectangle as the base for our card itself, and I will explain why in just a few minutes. So now that we have selected the rectangle, let's convert this into the banner of the card itself. So right click on the rectangle, go to plugins, go to Unsplash for the images. Let's select technology, and let's select, let's go with this one. Okay, perfect. So we now have the banner of our card. So now what we need to do is convert this image into a frame. So right click and then frame selection. Perfect, we have a frame now. Okay, so what we will do now is to add some description for this image. So we will click T on our keyboard. Oh, sorry. Yep, we have selected the text. Now let's start adding some description. Let's say this is microphone 101. Let's increase the text size from 20 to 30. Okay, that looks good. Now let us make this into a frame. We are going to duplicate it, and we have the description for the item itself. We are going to right click, go to plugins, and go to Lorem Ipsum, which will help us to add some text. Let's auto-generate 2 sentences and then click generate. Awesome. So this description text does not need to be as large as the image title itself. So let's decrease that to 15. That looks fairly good. Okay, let's bring it down to medium or regular. Okay, that looks good. So what we will do now is to convert the text layers themselves to frames. So right click on microphone, then frame selection, right click on the description itself, go to frame selection. Perfect. What we do now is to club these text layers or frames into an auto layout. So we select these, frame selection, go to auto layout. Awesome. So now we have an auto layout, and we can add some further layers to this. And you know what? Let's add some stars. Let's go to shapes, select star. Okay, we have a star. We are going to convert that into, before that, let's change the color into, let's say, something orangish. Perfect. Let's make this a 5-star item. So we right click on it, frame selection, then duplicate the number of stars, and all the 5 stars, we can club them into a single frame and eventually go to right, click on auto layout. Perfect, we have an auto layout. Let's just decrease the space to 10. Okay, that looks fairly good. So what we will do now is to bring these stars into the auto layout. So drag it into the frame, and there we go. Now we can switch the position of the stars as we see fit. What we will do now is to add the price of the item. So let's select the microphone, bring it down here, or we can actually keep it here, and then let's say we add the price, let's say $50. Okay, and then reduce the text to 20. Okay. And finally, we will add a button, which will be our call to action feature. And we are going to create that button and also finalize the creation of the entire card and test the responsiveness in our next video. Stay tuned.